Jeudy was fired up, but not in the way a leader should be. His outburst toward Shedeur Sanders came across more like a tantrum than a competitive spark. What started as a verbal clash quickly showed deeper emotional gaps. Jeudy's lack of composure stood out against Sanders' controlled demeanor, and that contrast wasn't lost on anyone watching. It wasn't just about one player yelling and the other keeping cool. It was a clear example of who's wired to lead in the NFL and who's still chasing emotional maturity. What this moment revealed about Sanders can't be overstated. Surrounded by coaching chaos and inconsistent teammates, he's still keeping his head while others lose theirs. He doesn't lash out. He doesn't deflect.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
He stays in the game mentally, and that's where real leadership lives. It's a kind of quiet toughness that doesn't need theatrics to make a point. And it's the reason Sanders keeps rising, no matter how loud the distractions get around him. It started with a sideline moment, but it revealed everything. One heated exchange between Jeudy and Shedeur Sanders, caught live, no filter, and the energy couldn't have been more opposite. On one side, you had frustration boiling over. On the other, calm, focus, control. Jeudy, visibly upset, let his emotions do the talking. Sanders? He let his body language and his silence do the leading. This wasn't just a petty argument. This was a full-on exposure of who's ready to lead and who's still letting the moment lead them. And the timing couldn't have been worse for Jeudy, because this wasn't just about words, it was about effort. Or lack of. Earlier in that same game, a touchdown was just sitting there. The route was open. The ball was placed where it needed to be. But Jeudy didn't finish it. No reach. No jump. No fight. Just a slow-motion failure on a play that should have shifted the momentum. It didn't. And it wasn't because of Sanders. That's the part that makes this whole thing sting. Jeudy had already left points on the field. He was already falling short in real time. But instead of owning that, he came for the quarterback, the only player still holding it together while everything else crumbled around him. And that's what people saw in that sideline moment. Not just an argument, but a dividing line between accountability and avoidance. Because Shedeur Sanders wasn't rattled. He didn't lash out. He didn't play the blame game. He stood there, calm, centered, in control, while Jeudy unraveled. That contrast? It said more than either of them could have. And this is where the story really starts to unravel, because this isn't just about one moment, one game, or one missed route. This is about a growing pattern on this team. Sanders is getting heat for the team's struggles, but he's the one who keeps showing up, focused, prepared, and grounded. Meanwhile, there's poor coaching decisions flying left and right, and players like Jeudy visibly coasting through key moments with no urgency and zero accountability. The leadership problem isn't coming from the quarterback position. If anything, Sanders is the one stabilizing the entire situation. Because when things fall apart, and they do frequently, he doesn't point fingers. He takes responsibility, publicly, repeatedly, even when it's not on him. That's what separates him. And then there's Kevin Stefanski. The coaching decisions being made are straight up reckless. Aggressive 4th and 1, calls deep in their own territory. Risky plays that make no sense situationally. Instead of giving Sanders the structure he needs to win, Stefanski's calls are setting him up to fail. And when they do, the media conveniently shifts the spotlight right back to the quarterback. It's becoming a broken record. Stefanski gambles, the play falls apart, and Sanders has to face the media storm alone. And somehow, he's the one who gets the criticism. Meanwhile, there's no accountability from the sideline. No real adjustments. No clear acknowledgement of the problem. And the media? They eat it up. It's easier to run with the narrative that the quarterback needs to do more than to actually break down the coaching flaws, or, heaven forbid, question why a starting wide receiver is jogging on a game-deciding route. And that's what makes this whole thing so backwards. Shedeur Sanders is under a microscope. Everything he does is magnified. Every decision dissected. Every misstep, no matter how minor, is headline material. But when Jeudy's out here ghosting plays, Or when Stefanski's calling Madden plays in real-life situations. Crickets. That media double standard is part of the problem. The second Sanders shows any sign of struggle, it's used to reinforce this lazy narrative that he's not delivering. But no one talks about the collapsing support system around him. The play calling, the missed routes, the blown blocks, the lack of urgency from the guys meant to help him succeed. And still, he doesn't fold. That's the most impressive part of all this. Because at this point, nobody would blame Sanders for finally snapping, for calling people out, for deflecting the blame when it's not his to carry. But he doesn't. He keeps taking the heat, answering for other people's mistakes, and focusing on what he can control. That's leadership. Real leadership. He's the guy absorbing all the pressure from the defense, from the fans, from the media, from inside his own locker room, and still walking back onto the field ready to compete, even when the system's broken, even when the effort isn't equal, even when he's left standing alone, again. You'd expect that from a seasoned vet. But Sanders? He's showing that maturity now, with everything stacked against him. That kind of poise isn't taught. It's earned through chaos, through adversity, through watching things fall apart around you and refusing to join the collapse. And the way this is going? He's being tested constantly. Because Stefanski isn't helping him. If anything, he's making it worse. When your head coach is calling high-risk plays from vulnerable positions and then brushing off the consequences, what kind of message does that send to the rest of the team? That there's no accountability, that there's no plan, that the quarterback's going to be left to clean it up again. Photos. And when you pair that with players like Jeudy not matching the intensity of the moment, it creates a disaster cocktail. One guy's locked in. The rest? Not so much. This kind of imbalance wears down a team. It breaks morale. It creates rifts. And the fact that Sanders hasn't let that shake him says everything about his makeup. This isn't just about performance. It's about emotional intelligence. And Sanders has it. He knows when to speak, when to hold back, when to take the hit, and when to move forward. That's why his response to the Jeudy moment stood out so much, because he chose not to escalate. It's easy to match energy in a heated moment. What's hard is staying grounded while someone else loses theirs. And that's exactly what Sanders did. The truth is that one moment on the sideline showed you everything you needed to know about the team's internal dynamics. One player cracked. One stayed composed. And no matter what the media spins it into, the tape doesn't lie. Jeudy let his effort dip in critical moments. Sanders didn't. The coaching staff put the team in unnecessary danger. Sanders didn't. The blame is being handed out to the wrong people. And that has to be called out. Because Sanders can't keep carrying this team on character and composure alone. The missed effort, the risky calls, the lazy narratives, they all need to be addressed. Not later. Now. Because a quarterback with this much discipline, this much focus, and this much mental toughness deserves better than the mess around him. And if people can't see that yet, it won't be long before they do. Because if Sanders is already showing this level of leadership through chaos, just wait until he gets a stable system and teammates who match his energy. That's when it's over. If you're tired of the wrong people getting blamed, if you've been watching Sanders hold it down while others fall short, drop a comment below. Let us know how you saw that sideline moment. And if you're here for honest breakdowns, no sugarcoating, and calling out exactly what's going on, like, subscribe, and stick with us. Because we're going to keep pulling back the curtain. And some people, they're not going to like what's behind it. Let's be real. This isn't just one bad game or one emotional outburst. It's a kind of moment that pulls the fire alarm on deeper issues. Because when a wide receiver explodes in frustration at the quarterback, not after a miscommunication, but after he himself dogged a touchdown route, what does that tell you? It tells you something's cracked in the foundation. And it's not Shedeur Sanders. The fact that he, of all people, is the one keeping it together while the walls shake says everything about his leadership. Because this isn't just about controlling emotion on the sidelines. This is about how you carry yourself when things aren't going your way, when the media turns, when teammates get sloppy, when the coaching decisions go off the rails and you're left trying to salvage something from the wreckage. And yet here's Shedeur Sanders, standing in the middle of it all, composed, focused, and still moving. Let's go back to that moment. The missed touchdown. The replay shows it clearly. Sanders dropped back, made the right read, put the ball exactly where it needed to be. You can't coach that kind of timing. It was a perfect window throw. The kind that separates average quarterbacks from elite ones. And what does he get in return? A receiver who jogs the route, doesn't extend, doesn't even try to make the play. That's not a coverage issue. That's not a timing issue. That's effort, or a lack of it. And you know what's worse? Not the missed play itself, but the audacity to turn around and blame the quarterback for it. Jeudy didn't just let the play die. He turned around and poured gasoline on the sideline, snapping at the one guy who's been doing his job from start to finish. That's when it became clear. Jeudy wasn't just frustrated. He was deflecting. And that's dangerous. Because when frustration turns into finger-pointing, especially in public, it breaks trust. And when you lose trust between a quarterback and his top wideout, you're done. That relationship has to be built on precision, but more importantly, on accountability. If one side's not owning their role, everything else crumbles. What we saw in that exchange was a player avoiding ownership and another staying grounded. Sanders didn't escalate. He didn't take the bait. He stood there like someone who's been here before. That kind of emotional control is rare. And it's exactly what you want in a franchise quarterback. Meanwhile, the coaching staff, well, they're not helping. Kevin Stefanski is out here treating every possession like a poker game, bluffing at midfield, gambling deep in his own territory, and acting shocked when it backfires. These aren't bold calls, they're reckless ones. And every time they fail, it's Sanders left trying to clean up the mess. Let's talk about that 4th and 1 call in the opponent's territory. The situation already felt shaky. The offense hadn't found a rhythm. Momentum was fragile. And instead of playing it smart, Stefanski doubled down on chaos. The result? A failed conversion and a short field for the other team. And again, Sanders is the one answering questions, taking hits in the media, bearing the weight of someone else's misjudgment. How many times does that need to happen before people start asking the real questions? Why are the play calls constantly leaving Sanders exposed? Why are critical moments being turned into unnecessary risks? Why is there no accountability on the coaching end, but the quarterback is being dragged through every post-game headline? That's the part that gets ignored. Everyone sees the final score, the missed opportunities, the stalled drives, but they don't look at how those things happen. They don't trace it back to the play calling, or the blown routes, or the receivers who aren't giving 100%. It all lands at Sanders' feet, and he quietly picks it up every time. There's a strength in that. But there's also a limit. Because eventually, leadership starts to demand more than composure. It demands change. And right now, Sanders is holding up his end of the deal, while too many around him aren't. The receivers aren't locked in. The coaching staff isn't adjusting. And the media? They're not even paying attention to where the real issues are. Let's talk about the media for a second. Every minor mistake from Sanders gets blown up into a narrative. A slightly off-target throw becomes a mechanics issue. A failed 3rd down conversion becomes a lack of vision. But no one's watching the effort or lack of it from the receiving corps. No one's putting Stefanski's play calls under the microscope. No one's dissecting those patterns. And yet, when Sanders keeps his mouth shut, keeps showing up, keeps leading through the mess, it gets dismissed as stoic. As if calm under pressure is just expected. No, that's not normal. That's elite-level maturity under fire. That's someone refusing to let the chaos around him dictate how he leads. And let's be clear, Sanders is leading. Not just through performance, but through posture, through resilience, through never turning on his teammates, even when they absolutely deserve it. Through answering for decisions he didn't make and mistakes he didn't commit. You can't teach that. What makes all of this even more frustrating is the long-term impact. Because if Sanders wasn't this composed, if he had snapped back at Jeudy or thrown Stefanski under the bus, then people would have pounced. Suddenly, The narrative would be that Sanders lacks control, that he can't handle pressure. The same people ignoring the missed routes and bad calls would have been the first to weaponize any moment of frustration. But he didn't give them that. He stayed calm. He took the high road. Again. And somehow, that's being used against him. As if his ability to stay composed makes him an easier target. As if leadership without yelling isn't leadership at all. Let's talk real consequences. If this continues, if Stefanski keeps gambling on bad plays, if Jeudy and others don't tighten up their effort, and if the media refuses to shift focus to the actual issues, then Sanders is going to carry this team into the ground just trying to keep it afloat. And that's not sustainable. Quarterbacks are supposed to lead, yes. But they're not supposed to do it alone. They're not supposed to be the emotional thermostat, the play executioner, and the post-game spokesperson all at once, while everyone else dodges it. So what happens next? Well, that depends on who's willing to change. Jeudy needs to look at the tape. Really look. Because the missed plays, the lack of hustle, the sideline outburst, that's not what a leader does. And if he wants to be a real contributor, he needs to start showing up when it counts. Not just in the huddle, but on the field. Stefanski? He needs to stop pretending he's in a chess match when he's playing checkers. You don't put your quarterback in crisis over and then ask why the team can't get traction. That starts with coaching. And it's past time for him to own that. As for Sanders, he'll keep showing up. Because that's who he is. That's what he does. But the real question is, how much longer can he carry everyone else's mistakes before it breaks something? This isn't just a quarterback under fire. This is a leader doing everything right and still being asked to do more, because the people around him won't meet the moment. And if that doesn't change, this team's future isn't going to be decided by one sideline argument. It's going to be decided by how long one player can stay composed while everything around him refuses to rise to his level. Let's not pretend this ends with one sideline clip going viral. That was just a spark. What's smoldering underneath is so much bigger. When Jeudy barked at Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't just a moment of tension. It was a breaking point. For the team. For the fans. For anyone paying attention to the deeper dysfunction nobody wants to admit. Because the real issue isn't that Jeudy lost his cool. It's why he felt comfortable doing it in the first place. Let's be honest. You don't go after your quarterback like that unless something's already off. You don't lash out when you drop the ball, literally and metaphorically. Unless you're trying to shift the spotlight. And when that spotlight's already red hot on Sanders because of media noise and questionable coaching, it becomes real easy for people to pile on. Even if they're part of the problem. That's what this whole thing exposed. A culture where effort is negotiable, accountability is dodged, and leadership is somehow expected to perform miracles with duct tape and a prayer. And yet, Shedeur Sanders keeps showing up. No shouting. No finger-pointing. No cryptic posts. Just consistent, steady leadership. Even when he has every reason to crack. What people fail to understand is that being a quarterback in the NFL is already pressure-filled. But being this quarterback in this environment, that's a whole different kind of weight. And Sanders is carrying it with grace that doesn't get nearly enough credit. Because here's the truth. Sanders didn't create this mess. He's trying to hold it together. He didn't design Stefanski's reckless fourth down calls. He didn't draw up plays that hang him out to dry. He didn't tell Jeudy to take a play off on a scoring route. But every single time, he's the one eating the... Let's talk about effort again, because it matters. Jeudy didn't just fail to make a contested catch. He didn't try. That's a decision. That's not bad luck. That's not miscommunication. That's not chemistry. That's a professional athlete mailing it in at the worst possible time. And when the camera caught that confrontation, all of that was on display. Jeudy with the flailing arms, the angry gestures, the public frustration. And Sanders? Still. Focused. Not even blinking. That composure? That's what leadership looks like. And yet, the media coverage didn't frame it that way. Headlines ran with tension between Sanders and Jeudy instead of the truth. Sanders stays composed while Jeudy implodes after lazy route. That would have been more accurate. But nuance doesn't sell. Drama does. especially when it fits a pre-built narrative about Sanders being unproven, or not ready, or too confident. Funny how the tone changes when it's not him losing it on the sideline. That's the part that feels intentional. Because when Sanders is calm, he's not passionate enough. When he's focused, he's aloof. But let another guy throw a tantrum after coasting through a game, and suddenly that gets shrugged off as emotion. It's a double standard, and it's exhausting. But Sanders doesn't bite. He never does. He keeps giving the right answers. He keeps protecting his teammates, even when they don't deserve it. He keeps absorbing criticism that belongs to everyone but him. And he does it without complaining. That's not weakness. That's character. Still, it's hard not to wonder how long it lasts. Because no matter how mentally tough he is, there's a point where the lack of support, from coaching, from teammates, from the media, starts to chip away. It shouldn't take superhuman effort just to maintain basic order on the field. But right now, Sanders has to be the playmaker, the adult in the room, the emotional anchor, and the PR filter. All while the people who should be helping him are either silent or spiraling. So what happens now? Well, that depends on who's willing to change. If Jeudy learns from this, if he watches that tape and sees that he wasn't just wrong, he was loud and wrong, there's hope. But if he doubles down, if he keeps throwing energy at the wrong person, that trust is gone. And when that trust is gone, the offense collapses. If Stefanski keeps pushing high-risk, low-reward decisions that put Sanders in a box, this team's identity will keep unraveling. They won't just lose games, they'll lose confidence, cohesion, purpose. But if there's a course correction, if effort becomes the standard again, if accountability becomes non-negotiable, and if leadership starts coming from more than just under center, this thing can still be saved. Because Sanders isn't the problem. He's the blueprint for how to weather storms. What he's shown game after game is how to lead when leadership is in short supply, how to remain level-headed when things go off the rails, how to represent a team, even when the team doesn't always represent him back. That's rare. That's real. But it's not sustainable unless the rest of the team starts matching that energy. If you're seeing what we're seeing, if you're tired of the wrong people catching the heat while the real issues skate by, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this with someone who still thinks Sanders is the problem. And drop a comment with your take on the Jeudy moment, the coaching calls, and who really needs to step up. And if you're here for the real story, the one the media keeps skimming over, subscribe. Because we're not done yet. And neither is Sanders.